Hello everyone, welcome to the next session. Today will be a very short session where we will create two components. We will be creating our application's header and footer. If you were following along, you would already understand how do we navigate in our application, what is client-side routing, and what is the folder structure that we have implemented along with the placeholder components for both header and footer. So today is the time when we populate both of those components with the appropriate content and style them appropriately using Bootstrap's classes. So let's dive into the code and get started. As I mentioned, if you were following along, you would already have something like this in the approutes.tsx. If not, don't worry about it. We will be creating the headers from scratch and I will talk through all the major developments that we will do so that we are all on the same page. Yeah. So first thing we will do, we will ensure that our server is running, which it is, and it will be running on port 3000. Here is our application. And as we can see, we had a very basic header in place along with products list page. There's already an issue that we can see. The header does not span across the entire screen. And that's something that we are going to fix today. I've just zoomed in on the page to make it 110% so that it's prominent on everyone's screen. Now let us go back to code. And to implement header, what we would do, we would open our components folder. In here, we will go to header and header.tsx. And now what we'll do is we will go to React Bootstrap, take their navbar and put it in our component. Yeah. So that's the fastest way to get started. Let's get started with that. So here we are in the React Bootstraps documentation. In here, you need to come to components, go to navbars, and the very first navbar that you see is a great example. So let's take everything that's in there, copy it, and paste it in our component. With this, there are missing imports because of which you will see a lot of errors coming. Let's ensure that we import anything that is necessary. One thing which we can definitely be sure of, we will not need this drop down because we don't have any drop down functionality. We have only two major pages, the landing page and the cart page. And the third major page that we deal with will not have a dedicated route of its own, but you will be able to navigate to it by clicking on the products. So let's delete the drop down and add imports for the remaining ones. So as we can see, navbar is coming from React Bootstrap. Container should come from React Bootstrap. And then you have your nav, which also should come from your Bootstrap. Now let's go back to the header that we already created. And inside nav, we were using NavLinks. We already discussed we use NavLinks because this is one of the components built on top of the existing link from React Router DOM, and it has the capability to show you active and transient states. So let's take the home and cart routes and replace the existing home and link with these two. And in here, what do we need to do? We need to import NavLink from React Router DOM because these are our clickable links. And we need to ensure these are imported from the router DOM library, not the React Bootstrap ones. Import, save. Another thing which we will do, there is navbar brand, the brand configuration. Here also we need to ensure that we use the React Router DOM's NavLink. This is one of the catches we already discussed in our previous session where we discussed client-side routing and React Router DOM. So if you are not aware of this, please go back and look at the catch condition 1. It would be there in the chapters marked in the video. So here we have this as navlink and it should take the user to homepage. And the homepage of our application will be called shop cart. Then you have your navbar toggle. What does navbar toggle do? So it's a button that will come up whenever you go beyond this resolution. So this expand, let's have a look. What does this mean? So for this, you can go to the API of navbar and in here you would see the expand keyword comes up. This is the breakpoint below which the navbar will collapse. As in, if you set it to LG, it will collapse below the larger resolution which is configured in React Bootstrap. If you want to understand what is a large breakpoint, so this is a large breakpoint. So anything that is greater than or equal to 992 is treated as a large device. So if you come below 992, as in if when you reach the resolution of 991 pixels, your header will collapse. and you would see a button come up onto your header. And this is something that you can see in the page as well. So let us fix it here and start bringing it down. So right now you see the page is at 1340, 1275, and let's bring it down to 991. And we can see 992, it's still a header. As soon as we bring it down to 991, it collapses and you see this collapsible button comes up. This is the navbar collapse. And what does it collapse? It collapses the section that it controls. So let's have a look at the code again. Navbar collapses the section that it controls. ARIA controls basic navbar nav. So let's give it an appropriate ID for our use case, which would be basic shop cart nav. So now it will collapse this navbar section, which will have our home and cart links. One more thing, let's close this, go back to the documentation. And here we know that we want the variant to be dark and the background. So let's add the variant to dark. So we added the variant as dark. We also want the background to be dark. So BG. Now your variation and background both are set to dark. And we do not need this. Let's remove the additional class which came up. Now, this header implementation is complete, but we are still using the hard-coded header in our application up routes. Let's delete that and import the header coming from the header component. Save it and let's see. You see shop cart, home and cart came, and home is already selected as active because we are on the root page. And if you go to cart, you see the cart page comes up. Now what do we need to do? We need to fix this issue where our header does not span to full width of the page. How do we fix that? This width of the page, this section is getting controlled by the container that is set in React Bootstrap. And it's not spanning to the entire space because in our app component in the app.tsx, we are rendering everything within the container. Let's remove app routes outside of container and remove the unused import. Let's see. Now the header is full width, but our content is also overflowing. Let's fix that as well. To fix that, it's a very simple fix. The container that we took out should actually be restraining our content at the route level. Let's move it up, save it, and we can see now shop cart and everything aligns properly to a single vertical line. In an enterprise applications, these alignments are really important, so please pay close attention to them. Now, surprisingly, our header implementation is complete. Now let's go to footer. Footer will be a very small component. Let's open it. In the div, let's use the appropriate semantic, which is footer, and in the footer, we will have a container to still ensure that entire content of the page is still aligned to the same vertical space. And then you can have a small subtext where you can have a copyright symbol. Here, let's put in the standard copyright text. Let's import this in our app routes beneath our header outside the container because the content inside is already in a container, as we can see, similar to what we had in header. So header content is also within a container, footer's content is also within a container, and our entire application will already render inside a container. Now, let's include this footer and let's check our application. How does it look? Not that great, right? Let's fix that. So what are the issues that we see right away? It does not have a distinctive feature which calls out that it's a footer. That's number one. Second, the footer of the page, we want it to be aligned to the bottom of the page, not stuck to the content, because this is a real possibility that the content of your page might not always take the entire vertical space or will go beyond the vertical space that is available. And in those specific cases, we still want to ensure that our footer does not stick to the content or shift above the end of the page. So let's fix that. And in Bootstrap, it's really easy to fix this. First thing, let's fix the color. So at the footer, let's add a class name. What do we need? We need the background to be dark. So BG dark. Then we want to have the text as white color. We want to have some padding at the top and bottom within the footer. So PY3 and margin top, let's set it to auto. This would be important when we try to align it to bottom. And then you see, It's already looking good. Now it would look even better if we center the content to the footer. So for that, what we need to do at this container level, class name text center, and now entire text at the footer is centered properly. Now to align the footer to the bottom of our screen, we will go back to our app routes, and in here, let's introduce a div beneath browser router. So div, and move entire content under this div. Now we will add some classes to this div, and we'll talk about what do they mean. So dflex will ensure that the layout of this div is set to display flex. Then how does the content need to flow? It should flow in the column, so from top to bottom. Then min vertical height, let's set it to 100%. So this div should span to 100% always. Let's add the class name py4 so that our content which is within the header and footer does not stick to either the header or the footer. And for footer, as we have already seen, we set the margin top to auto. So within a display flex layout and vertical height 100%, the footer will automatically now start sticking to the bottom of the page, as we can see. So for the pages where the content is less than 100% width, it will stick to the bottom of the page. And for the pages which are larger than that, it will always be at the bottom of the content behavior that we wanted. Let's remove any of the unused imports that we see and close any of the files that we are not using. And there we have it. We have your app routes configured where we have your browser router. We do not need this fragment anymore. Let's remove that. And here we have it. We have removed any of the components that we were not using, and we have implemented the header and the footer on our application. We also ensured that the footer of our application is always sticking to the bottom of the page, even if we do not have enough content on the page. That is a really good behavior to have in your applications throughout. So even if you're not using React, Bootstrap, or similar frameworks, as long as you understand the basics that are involved, as in setting the minimum vertical height of the container to 100%, display is set to flex, and then the footer is set at the bottom of that div with margin top set to auto. So empty auto. Class is ensuring that margin top is set to auto, and that ensures that in a flex layout, the footer is always sticking to the bottom of the page. Hope you have your application running with a header and footer and were able to follow up till this point. Please let me know if you run into any issues or need any additional help from my end. Please drop a comment and I'll try to be of help where I can. So in the next section, we will create the API service finally, integrate it with an API where we will be fetching the data from. We will call the service that we create to fetch the data and show the list of products on our screen. Thank you for joining in today. See you in the next one.